A baby discovered a pregnant German shepherd partially buried in the mud, and what happened next moved everyone to tears. What followed will truly surprise you. This powerful story of bravery, hope, and an unbreakable bond will leave you emotional. If this touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and tell us where you're listening from in the comments below. Let's begin. Brackenwood was the kind of town most people drove past without a second glance. Tucked between thick forests and rolling green hills, it held a quiet kind of charm, simple, slow, and undisturbed. Life moved gently there. Birds sang at dawn, crickets chirped at night, and neighbors always waved from their porches. For Claire Bennett, Brackenwood was more than just a town. It was a place to begin again. After losing her husband in a tragic accident, she had packed up what little was left of their old life and moved here with her son Ethan, hoping the quiet might help them both heal. Ethan was 7. With curly brown hair and deep, soulful eyes, he looked like a child who carried more than his age could explain. Since the accident, he hadn't spoken a single word. The doctors called it selective mutism, but Claire called it heartbreak. She missed his voice the most, the way he used to sing along to cartoons or whisper goodnight. Now their house echoed with silence. It was a rainy afternoon when everything changed. Claire was outside, hanging laundry under the soft drizzle, her hands working mechanically while her mind wandered, as it often did, to the life she once had. She turned for a moment, folding a sheet, and when she looked back, Ethan was gone. Her heart dropped. "Ethan!" she called, but the only reply was the patter of rain on leaves. She scanned the yard, panic rising like a storm inside her chest. Then she saw them, tiny muddy footprints, leading through the grass and vanishing into the woods. Without a second thought, Claire ran. The wet earth clung to her bare feet. Thorny branches scratched at her arms. But she didn't care. She followed the prints deeper and deeper into the forest, calling his name between ragged breaths. After what felt like forever, she spotted him, kneeling in the mud, completely soaked, digging furiously with his bare hands. Claire rushed toward him. "Ethan!" she gasped, relief and fear colliding. He didn't answer. His small hands kept digging, dirt flying, tears mixing with the rain on his cheeks. Then Claire saw what he was trying to uncover, a pregnant German shepherd half buried in the mud. The dog's body was bruised, weak, barely breathing. Her belly was swollen, ready to give birth. A thick, rusted chain wrapped around her neck, anchoring her to something beneath the soil. Ethan looked up at Claire. His eyes didn't plead for help. They commanded it. Claire dropped to her knees beside him, ignoring the pain in her hands as she clawed at the earth. "We're going to get her out," she whispered, more to herself than to him. They dug together, mother and son, mud-covered and breathless. Every movement was desperate, every second precious. Finally, with one final pull, the dog slipped free from the ground and into Claire's arms. A small worn metal tag dangled from her collar. It read one word, Nova. But their work wasn't finished yet. Mud clung to their clothes, fingernails caked with soil, as Claire and Ethan dug with desperation. The rain had soaked through their jackets, but neither noticed. Their focus was on the battered body lying limp beneath the earth, the pregnant German shepherd they had uncovered in the forest. The dog's breathing was shallow, each rise of her chest weaker than the last. A rusted iron chain was still wound tightly around her neck, its other end disappearing into something buried deeper, an anchor that had kept her trapped. Claire's hands were raw, her palms cut and bleeding, but she didn't stop. Not when she looked into the dog's tired, pain-filled eyes. Not when she felt Ethan's tiny hand press against her back, steadying her. "Hang on," Claire whispered, though she wasn't sure if it was for the dog or for herself. The tag on the dog's collar read just one word, Nova. A name, a spark of identity for a creature so close to death. Claire held on to that name like a promise. As they lifted Nova carefully from the hole, her body shuddered. Claire could feel the tension in her belly, the hard contractions beginning. Nova whimpered softly, a cry so fragile it barely rose above the rain. "Oh no," Claire breathed. "She's in labor." Ethan's eyes widened with alarm, and he grabbed her hand. "We have to get her home," Claire said, already pulling off her soaked jacket to wrap around the dog. Somehow, between the two of them, They managed to carry Nova back to the house, where Claire laid her gently on an old quilt by the fireplace. Her hands trembling, Claire grabbed her phone and called Dr. Hayes, the town's only veterinarian. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Please, she's in labor. She's hurt. She won't make it without help." Dr. Hayes didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. The moments that followed felt like hours. Claire gathered towels, heated water, and tried to comfort Nova, whispering to her gently. Ethan knelt nearby, never looking away, his silence deeper than ever, but his presence solid, anchoring. When Dr. Hayes finally arrived, soaked and breathless, he knelt beside the dog and began working immediately. "She's in rough shape," he said. "Dehydrated, weak, but she's a fighter. So are her pups." One by one, Nova delivered the puppies. Tiny, wet bundles of life, squirming and squeaking as they entered the world. Claire helped clean and dry them, wrapping each in soft towels. The sight of them, so small, so new, filled the house with something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. And then came the fifth puppy. It was silent. Limpio, not breathing. Claire froze. Her hands hovered helplessly. Dr. Hayes moved to try resuscitation, but then something unexpected happened. Ethan leaned forward. He placed a gentle hand over the still pup, and with a voice that hadn't been heard in nearly a year, he whispered, "Live." A soft gasp broke the silence. The puppy's chest rose. It took its first breath. Claire turned toward her son, her eyes wide, her heart thundering in disbelief. "You spoke," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan met her gaze, and for the first time in months, she saw him, really saw him, awake, alive, and full of something long buried. Nova had brought more than puppies into the world that day. She had brought back a voice. Later that night, as thunder rumbled softly in the distance, and the household tried to rest after Sergeant Vance's unsettling visit, Ethan stood quietly by Nova's side. The fire had dimmed to a warm glow, and the puppies lay nestled against their mother, breathing in peaceful rhythm. But Ethan wouldn't move. His brow furrowed, eyes fixed on Nova's still swollen belly. "There's another one," he whispered. Claire, already exhausted from the emotional storm of the day, gently shook her head. "Sweetheart, she's had all her puppies." But Ethan didn't waver. He pressed a hand softly against Nova's side. "He's still in there. I can feel him." Something in his voice, calm, sure, steady, made Claire pause. She called Dr. Hayes, apologizing for the late hour, and he arrived within 20 minutes, rubbing sleep from his eyes but carrying his equipment. As he ran the ultrasound probe gently over Nova's belly, his expression changed. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. "He's right." There it was, a seventh heartbeat. Faint but steady, a tiny form hidden deep, missed in the chaos of the initial delivery. "She's not done yet." Claire's heart raced as Nova was coaxed through the final stage of labor. Minutes felt like hours until at last the puppy was born. Small, delicate, and unlike any of the others. Its fur was darker, but on its chest was a patch of pure white shaped like a starburst. And when the room went still and the firelight flickered low, something strange happened. The puppy's eyes blinked open, and in that moment, for just a heartbeat, they glowed, softly, faintly, casting a light that danced like silver. Ethan knelt close, smiling, as if he'd been waiting for this one all along. "He's special," he said quietly. "He's the one they're really after." The days that followed were a blur of tension and urgency. Sergeant Vance and his men had not given up. Their relentless pursuit drove Claire, Ethan, Nova, and the puppies deeper into the wilds beyond Brackenwood, forcing them to seek refuge far from the safety of their home. Eventually, they found themselves at a remote, weather-beaten cabin perched on the edge of the forest. The structure was old and forgotten, its wooden walls scarred by years of storms and neglect. But it offered a brief sanctuary. Inside, the air was thick with fear and determination. The puppies nestled close to Nova, who seemed more alert than ever. But Vance's trackers were closing in fast. The night they finally came, the sharp crack of snapping twigs and the distant murmur of voices shattered the stillness. Claire's heart hammered as she gathered the family. There was no time to hesitate. They slipped out through the back door, vanishing into the shadowy forest. Branches clawed at their faces as they ran, the cool night air heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Ethan carried the youngest puppy, while Claire kept close to Nova, who moved with a protective grace. They fled deeper, seeking shelter in the only place that offered true concealment, an ancient cave hidden behind a thick curtain of vines. The cave was dark and cool, the walls damp with moss, but it was safe, at least for a moment. Then something impossible happened. Nova's eyes flared with an otherworldly blue light, bright and fierce against the darkness. A low growl rose from her throat, deep and resonant, echoing off the cave walls. And then from the shadows, ghostly shapes began to form, silhouettes of dogs translucent and shimmering with ethereal light. The illusion was so vivid, so terrifying, that when Vance and his men reached the cave's mouth, they stopped dead in their tracks. The phantom dogs snarled and lunged with spectral teeth, their glowing eyes burning with an unearthly fire. Panic rippled through the pursuers. Shouts turned to screams as they fled, tripping over roots and stumbling blindly into the dark forest, unwilling to face the supernatural guardians. Claire exhaled shakily, holding Ethan close. Nova's power had saved them, for now, but the chase was far from over. After their narrow escape, Claire, Ethan, Nova, and the puppies were guided through the dense forest by mysterious figures who seemed to appear from the shadows, like guardians themselves. These allies led them to a hidden sanctuary known only as Havenbrook, a secret animal refuge tucked away in the heart of the wilderness, shielded from prying eyes and unwanted forces. Havenbrook was unlike anything Claire had ever seen. The sprawling grounds were alive with quiet energy, filled with animals of all kinds, each cared for with gentle hands and loving hearts. The air was thick with the scent of pine and fresh earth, mingled with something almost magical. A feeling that this place was more than just a refuge. It was a sanctuary. Here they finally found answers. A calm woman named Dr. Langley, one of the refugee's founders, sat down with Claire and Ethan. Her eyes held a deep understanding, a compassion forged through years of fighting for creatures like Nova. She revealed the truth behind Nova's origins. Nova wasn't just a stray or a victim of cruelty. She was part of something far greater, Project Starlight. The project was an experimental program designed to create dogs with enhanced senses, canines who could perceive things beyond normal human ability. They could see in the dark, hear whispers carried by the wind, and detect dangers lurking far before they became threats. But what truly set Nova apart was the secret of the seventh puppy. Unlike her siblings, this tiny pup didn't just sense danger. It held a rare and powerful gift, the ability to guide those it loved through darkness and peril, to show the way to safety when all seemed lost. Claire's heart swelled with a mix of hope and fear. They had found refuge, yes, but the path ahead was still fraught with danger. The chase was not over, and the mystery of the seventh puppy was only just beginning. Vance wasn't done. He wanted Nova and her puppies back, especially the star-marked one. The seventh puppy's rare gift was no secret to him, and its potential power weighed heavily on his mind. He saw it as a weapon, a tool that could tip the balance in a shadowy world of secrets and control. For Vance, failure was not an option, but Claire and Ethan would do anything to protect them. They had come too far, survived too much, to let their newfound family be torn apart again. The quiet days of hope and healing had transformed into a fierce battle for survival, a fight fueled not just by fear, but by love. Claire's resolve burned hotter than ever. She was willing to stand against anyone, even a soldier like Vance, to keep Nova and her puppies safe. Ethan, too, found strength he never knew he had. The silence that had haunted him since Nova's rescue was breaking, replaced by a determination as steady and sure as Nova's protective gaze. The bond they shared was unbreakable, forged in the fires of hardship and renewed hope. Nova hadn't just saved Ethan's voice, she'd brought their family back to life. Together they prepared for what was coming. Every shadow, every sound could signal danger. Yet amidst the tension, there was also a quiet confidence, a belief that their love, their courage, could overcome even the darkest threats. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting for freedom, for a chance to live on their own terms, and for the future of the extraordinary little puppy whose destiny was just beginning to unfold. No matter what lay ahead, Claire, Ethan, Nova, and their shining star were ready. The fight for freedom had only just begun. Under the vast, shimmering canopy of stars at Havenbrook, the night wrapped the sanctuary in a calm, soothing embrace. The air was cool and fragrant with the scent of pine and wildflowers, a gentle reminder of the safety they had fought so hard to find. In a quiet corner of the refuge, Nova lay peacefully beside her puppies, their soft breaths rising and falling in rhythm with the stillness of the night. The seventh puppy, Starburst, curled tightly against Ethan's side, its tiny paws twitching as it dreamed. A faint silver glow flickered from its eyes in the dim moonlight, a subtle shimmer that seemed to speak of something greater than itself. Ethan's fingers brushed gently through the soft fur, a quiet smile touching his lips. He felt the weight of the journey behind them and the fragile hope of what was still to come. Claire stood nearby, watching them all with a heart full of relief and cautious optimism. The battle had been long, the dangers relentless, but in this moment they were safe. Nova's fierce strength had shielded them, and the sanctuary of Havenbrook had given them a chance to heal. But Claire knew their peace was only temporary. The world outside was still watching, still waiting. There were questions left unanswered and shadows yet to be faced. Yet for now, under the stars and in the gentle hum of new life, there was only this: family, love, and the quiet promise of a future they would face together. She smiled softly and whispered into the night, "We're safe. For now." And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. If you've been moved by their journey, don't forget to share their story and stay tuned, because the adventure is far from over.